Hi everyone, it's Fiona here from fionamarks.com, and I'm back with press clippings. I haven't done any press clippings for a little while, but if you follow the channel or you know me well, you know that I love to see what's going on in the world and see those connections between different areas of science and maths and daily events. And today was just one of those days where the news was just so relevant to what's going on with astrology that I'm doing a very low-tech look at press clippings today. And maybe the best place to start is actually just to have a look at the sky a little bit. So let's share the screen. And this is just extremely low tech. I've just loaded up a chart for right at the moment, just to give you a picture of what's happening in the sky. So it depends on whether you like the circle view or the square view. The things that are really happening for everyone in the world right now is we're just entering into this lunar eclipse time. So I'm just pointing it out here on the South Indian chart in the bottom left-hand corner. We've got in Gemini right now, we have Rahu, Sun, and Mercury, who is also retrograde. And we're going to have the moon joining them in the next couple of days for a solar eclipse. And this is something that I have been looking forward to. As many of you know, I'm relatively new to astrology, and right around a year or so ago, Ernst Wilhelm did a video sort of explaining how perhaps the eclipses were involved in what went down with COVID, and brought to my attention this concept or this table of eclipses called the Saros cycle, which basically looks at these eclipse patterns. It's on NASA.com. So this is an astronomy thing, not an astrology thing. But basically these eclipses are repeating themselves from where they start, either in the northern hemisphere, working their way all the way down to the southern hemisphere, or the opposite, starting in the southern hemisphere, and over many, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years working their way to the northern hemisphere. So we have these Saros cycles, and it was the first that I'd heard about it. As I said, I'm relatively new to astrology, but of course, that one that went down at the end of 2019, involving Capricorn and Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto. There was a whole bunch of things going on. And it was a difficult Saros cycle. And I was fascinated. Of course, I went and had a look and looked it all up. And one of my main takeaways from that video was that eclipse was pretty tough. The next one coming up with Rahu, pretty tough. Then a whole nother one going through with Ketu, not so good. But if we could make it through to June 10, 2021, we were going to come to this eclipse in Gemini that has a real potential to give flashes of insight that will maybe solve problems that we're having now that we haven't been able to. And it reminds me of a T.S. Eliot quote, which I will probably slightly misquote, but it's something like, you come back to the place that you were and you see it as if for the first time. Or maybe it's an Einstein quote, who knows? Okay, we have to look up where that quote comes from. But it's this idea that sometimes actually we have problems that we can't solve, but all the ingredients are there, but we just can't see it yet. And we need that moment of inspiration or a flash of creativity. And that this one coming up now in June 2021 was going to be that. And I remember thinking at the time, maybe there's a COVID solution there, and crossing my fingers and hoping there was like a plastic in the ocean solution and a global warming environmental crisis solution, so I've got my fingers very much crossed for this eclipse. So I've been looking forward to it. So we're coming up to it now. And we know that because we've got Rahu there, it could be revealing something that we haven't seen yet. It's with the sun and moon, of course. You need those guys to get the eclipse, but it's going to be with Mercury retrograde, perhaps revealing information and the way that we perceive things. Mercury, that ability to cognize and put things together, and the way that we perceive our world. So that's one of the main things that's going on in the sky for everyone right now. The other thing that's going on is this Uranus-Saturn, what they call square. Okay, they're at a 90-degree angle to each other, and all year, because of retrogrades, they sort of stay pretty much in this pattern. And Saturn is currently retrograde. You can see that there, making this square, or these guys in that position with each other. And it's quite a fascinating placement because Saturn is generally, we would think about conservative and restricting and constricting and saying no to things, setting boundaries and not wanting to change. The old, it's the old ways, and it's time and slow moving change. So generally that's what we think of Saturn. Okay. And then I don't use the outer planets much, but Uranus, perhaps, rebellious and innovative or inventive, creative flashes of creativity, out of this world, so quite opposing energies. So we have these two big outer planets with opposing styles of life. But then on top of that, we've put them in like opposing houses. So Saturn, that conservative, no restricting energy, is in Aquarius, this innovative, woo, anything could happen air sign. And I think that might normally be ruled by Uranus in a Western astrology point of view. Don't quote me, but maybe. And then we've got Uranus in Taurus, a fixed earth sign, so incredibly stable place. So it's kind of like, the big question is, in this battle between Saturn and Uranus, what would winning look like anyway? Because they're both kind of fighting. It's like the blue fighter is in the red corner and the red fighter is in the blue corner. And if whoever wins, was it the red or the blue that won? Because they're in these out of their usual placements. But this pattern is happening all year. And so we could think about it as, some battles between conservatism and innovative, between restrictions and invention. What is going to be going head to head, and who's going to come out on top there. So these are the two themes in the press clippings today that I just couldn't ignore. So let's, oops, sorry about that. Let's stop sharing this and then have a look at what's going on in the press clippings. Okay, so here we are, about to have a look at some press clippings. Just bringing you back to my newsletter from a couple of weeks ago. I don't necessarily always talk about transits in my newsletter, but I did at the end of May because there was so much going on. And I just have a little paragraph here about what's going on with the eclipses. And I talk about these Saros cycles. And we've got this June 10th promises of enriching flashes of insights and creativity. And the video newsletter goes into that a lot more than the paper one. But if we go have a look at this wonderful, I don't know where this is really from or who's designed it, but it tells us a little bit about eclipse families. If you don't have the book, the Eagle and the Light book, and you can see that whereas the eclipses in recent 18 months have been restrictive and heavy, this one's got this receptivity, impressionable, there's an openness to it. We've got illusion, delusion, vision. So we've got some of these key themes that we think that this eclipse is about. And then I'm blown away by this story today, which is about a police and FBI operation that I take it a few officers got together having a beer and had this idea of what if we created a WhatsApp for criminals and we could listen into it. It's kind of like this flashing of inspiration. And if you do have the Eagle and the Lark book, it does say that we can follow our hunches with this eclipse coming up. So this is a bit of a sense of these officers following a hunch, and in a way, what do they have to lose? And they've come up with quite an elaborate technology of these illicit sort of smartphones, and they can't call anyone, they can't SMS anyone, you can't receive emails on them. But if you put a code in the calculator function or something, you get access to this messenger app that has its own secure website with this triple rating of security, all this kind of stuff, like completely faked. And they managed to distribute these phones, which of course only they can make, right? A very specific style of phone, and market it to criminals, obviously, they did a great job, as a very secure form of communication. And thousands and thousands of phones managed to get distributed over the 3 years of this particular operation. And because it seems so secure, like deals are being done, just with no code words or no hidden, it's just direct communication, establishing all of this evidence of criminal activity. And you can read the articles, which I have been doing all day long. But I just thought this was a really great example of this eclipse that we have coming up. It's like technology that we already have. It's the ingredients that we already have here, but we didn't know how to harness them. We didn't know how to use them. And suddenly you see it for the first time. And I think that we can keep our eyes open in this coming, week and 2 weeks, as the eclipse is coming on June 10th. So we're really in that, very close to the eclipse now. Thinking about being open to your own flashes of creativity and insight, and hopefully we will see also at a global level, like scientific progress that comes, from around this time, that we're going to get insights into things that are problems that we know about now. Like we may have even defined them. It's not that these are unknown things, we just haven't seen how to solve them yet. So I think this is a great example of the eclipse energy that we're in. I look forward to hearing all of your creative flashes of inspiration. And now the other main pattern that we have going on is this Saturn-Uranus square that we were talking about. One's conservative, restrictive, saying no, and one's rebellious, innovation and invention. And I thought that this G7 agreement that we have here is a very interesting play in this Saturn-Uranus space. So basically, you all know the problem that there are incredibly smart multinational companies that are very interested in providing profit to their shareholders, which is exactly what they are set up to do. And they're able to operate and exploit tax regimes across the world because they can shop around, they can locate their transactions in the places that are most favorable. And it's been very difficult for location-based administrations, like sovereign administrations, to effectively collect the fair amount of taxation revenue from these companies. And so now we have this agreement at the G7 level. So the 7 traditionally most powerful economies around the world have agreed about a minimum tax rate, therefore stopping the ability theoretically of these multinationals to shop around and do transactions in places where it's most effective from a tax point of view. Now, this article, of course, goes on to point out that there are many obstacles to implementing something like this, and we can't say that, the deal is done and it's signed and it's implemented. But I think what this kind of shows is that what do we have? Like, if we think of these big multinationals, they are a little bit the Uranus thing. They're innovative, and they, sovereign boundaries make absolutely no sense to these enormous companies. And they are companies that maybe conceptually didn't even exist 20 years ago or 25 years ago. They're just so innovative. And so we've got that Uranus kind of energy. And yet at the same time, we have now this constriction, this agreement, which is very hard. You know, it takes a lot of time for Saturn to be able to catch up to these fast moving, nimble innovations. And we have this kind of heaviness and constriction, and trying to put boundaries around this, and trying to solve innovative problems like multinational companies with our old paradigm. So I don't want to say that by any means the deal is done and it's all solved, but isn't it interesting that to make a multinational step in that direction during this time of Saturn and Uranus in Aquarius and Taurus really battling out the blue fighter in the red corner and the red corner and the blue fighter, and trying to round the square of innovation and conventions, you know, things that we boundaries or constrictions that we've had for such a long time. So this was a great example. So let me know what you think about this. Let's put the sky. Oops, sorry, I can see the sky, but I need to share it with you if you want to see the sky. Which suddenly I can't see here. Oh, here it is. Let me share that sky with you again in case it prompts in your mind anything. So I guess I'm leaving you then with the reflection of what an exciting eclipse we're coming up to. And I hope that you receive the hunches and insights that are going to propel you forward creatively in the future. Be open to seeing things that you haven't seen, things that you always knew that were there, but suddenly now you know how to harness them and do something with them. And then I think it's at this really this global level. Let's keep watching this tension between innovation and restriction, and see what else comes. That article that I shared, which I'll put on the YouTube video, was really talking about the US coming to the table, a change in US approach to multinational negotiations. And whereas perhaps we've been seeing from the US recently that kind of my way or the highway, and what I know is right, and you know, making its own inroads, you know, in trying to make the world fair, or at least fair for the US. What if the US came back as a big player at these international tables? And you know, what would that mean? So I just find it fascinating. I love reading the press. I love seeing what's going on in the world. I look forward to your feedback about what you think is going on in the sky and how it's affecting you, or how it's affecting the things that you see in the world. Okay, until then, stay well, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.